Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we are taking a look at the new OCG Forbidden and Limited list, and the reason that we are taking a look at this is because there are a few things that are in here that I saw that I want to talk about. Now, well, yeah, let's just hop into this, because it's rather interesting overall. That's pretty much it. First and foremost, we have some new unlimits. Eclipse Wyvern is going to 3, which is kind of interesting. Baldrake was semi at some point. I don't even remember that happening. Astrograph is back to 3. Emergency is back to 3. Pot of Desires is back to 3. I don't actually like this. I think Pot of Desires is a frustrating card. Same thing with like Pot of Extrav and actually just those two. Just the sheer card advantage that you get from those cards, I think is a bit too powerful in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And just being able to like draw two is very, very strong. That being said, though, Pot of Desires doesn't matter nearly as much because almost every deck has like 1 to 2 mandatory cards to search, and like just banishing those can be game ending. So I think it overall does work, but I still feel like it's really powerful. And yeah, I'm just not a fan of the pot cards in general, and I think limiting them is just better than having them at 3. Because I mean, we've seen what Pot of Prosperity did at 3. We've seen what Pot of Extrav in Genesis did at 3. And I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just not a fan of them. Sorry, besides the point, I'm getting sidetracked. Pearly Sleepy Memory is finally back to 3. Wraithsoth is at 3, kind of interesting. For some reason, Sprite is still like heavily limited in the OCG. I don't know what it is about the OCG, but they really don't like Sprite. I mean, it was quote-unquote tier 0 over there, but alas. This is what I want to talk about. This right here. Ash Blossom enjoys spring, going from 3 to 2. Now, I'm almost certain a lot of people are going to be like, why would you hit Ash Blossom? What about this or that or the other thing? Or everyone is going to make note of the Perulius, the Molcharmies, and Maxx C. And to that I say, yeah, understandable, right? Having an out to those cards is very nice, right? However, Ash Blossom is less about interacting with those, because while that is an interaction, you're trading a hand trap for a hand trap. You're trading non-engine for non-engine. Realistically, that's not what the purpose of Ash Blossom is, or what it should be, right? The point of Ash Blossom, most of the time, is to hinder some sort of engine, right? To slow down the opponent in some capacity. And the thing is, while this does give a boost to decks like Branded, that heavily rely on resolving things like Branded Fusion, it ultimately really just hurts rogue decks. And this has been the case for quite some time, right? There are so many decks that have the capability to play through hand traps, but get absolutely stifled by specifically Ash Blossom. Things like Dark Lord, things like Plunder Patrol, things like Warrock is a bad example, but still. These are just decks that I think of that are just like, oh, yeah, I could play through Imperm, I could play through Impulse, I could play through this or that or the other thing. If you drop an Ash Blossom on me, I will explode. And there's a ton of decks like that. Ash Blossom is keeping in check a lot of those decks and not nearly as many of the meta decks. It's not really being helpful in regards to the metagame. Most of the time, what it's doing is just stifling other decks, preventing them from actually being able to be played, right? Even like Blue Eyes gets absolutely trounced by Ash Blossom, right? There's a ton of decks that are just stifled by the omnipresence of Ash Blossom, right? And the thing is, Ash Blossom has not actually been that good against meta decks for quite some time. The only reason you can consistently play Ash Blossom is due to the fact that Maxx C, Fuelos, Ferulia, etc. still exist, and you still have to deal with those. Like, realistically, Ash Blossom is a very cuttable card. Right now, it's good because of Draco Tail, but even then, prior to that, it was like, yeah, you want to play Ash Blossom against Malice? Yeah, good luck. So, for the most part, I really am just not a fan of Ash Blossom in general. At least within the last couple of years, I feel like it has mostly been a hindrance to meta decks, or rogue decks, as opposed to a hindrance to meta decks. And so, for the most part, I think that this card is just, it's had its time in the sun. It's been meta for 8 years. Holy crap. Almost 8 years, 7 years. And yeah, it's just time to go. So, I actually like this change. I think you could entirely ban Ash, and I would be happy with it. That being said, let's look at the rest of this list, because I think there's some other interesting changes. Solemn Judgment to 3, or to 2. No. Dominus Impulse to 2. I understand this. Dominus Impulse in particular is a crazy card, and yeah, it's just an insane non-engine piece, so I actually don't hate this change. That being said, I do love the Dominus cards, but I do think Impulse is just a little overtuned, and I think putting it from 3 to 2 means that you're just less likely to see it, and so there's that. That being said, it's still an insane card, and being able to play it is still crazy. I think you needed to limit this again, if it really mattered. Anyway, we have some new limitations. Toad is back. Hip hip hooray, we love Toad. Me and my homies love Toad. We have Metamorphosis back. Honestly, this sounds scary, but in reality, I don't know how much this is actually going to accomplish. Mostly due to the fact that what are you going to tribute? And then what are you going to get, right? It's not like there's a lot of good fusion targets, right? The most notable one that you would... The first one that I thought of was, oh my gosh, I could get Norden. Norden's banned. I don't know what else you would get. Like, I don't know, some random fusion for your archetype. Maybe. But for the most part, I don't think this accomplishes too much, especially as a non-searchable one-of. This feels very similar to that of, like, Monster Reborn, where it's like, oh yeah, in theory, like, you could do something with this. But it's at 1, so never mind. I think if it goes to 3, it could cause issues, but at 1, I really don't see it doing a whole lot. Theoretically, you could do stuff. Realistically, I don't think it's going to accomplish much. Mostly just due to the fact that it is that unsearchable one-of. Ice Ryzeal from 3 to 1. I actually don't hate this. If I'm not mistaken, in the OCG, Ryzeal is still extremely present. So, again, some sort of limitation to Ryzeal makes sense. And this is what I wanted to talk about as well. Whoa, Maxx C from 2 to 1. Hey, more likely we are going to see a similar change within Master Duel, and I do think that this is moving in the right direction. Obviously, Maxx C is a massive issue and is a massive problem within Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Just being able to consistently draw cards is very, very frustrating. Fuwalas, you can play around. Like, there is legitimate game to be played when you get Fuwad. When you get Peruliad, when you get Meowlsed, any of the other Molcharmies, you can actually interact with in some capacity. You get to make a decision on whether or not, or how many cards your opponent is going to draw. That's just not the case with Maxx C. It kind of just ends the turn if it resolves, and it's very, very frustrating. So, it going from 2 to 1, 1 is frustrating, because now it's going to be a Saki one-of, but 2, and more importantly, actually means that a lot more games are going to be played, because you're not just going to rely on activate the Maxx C, draw into a million cards, and kill the opponent with just sheer card advantage, or have the opponent basically pass on nothing. So, overall, I like this change. Obviously, get rid of him, just ban him. They're never going to just straight up ban him, but I do like the idea that, hey, they saw how problematic even Maxx C at 2 was, and they decided, yeah, let's move him down to 1. There is a chance next year, maybe, we get the Maxx C ban. Mululu's also going from 3 to 1. This makes sense. This is an insane card for the Draco Tail lineup, so makes sense. I don't know how much this changes overall for the deck, because realistically, you're still going to have a large amount of engine, right? And you're still going to have enough names, but I do think it slows down the deck enough. So there's that. Marshmallow, also going from 3 to 1. Again, another very solid starter / extender for the Yummy archetype, going from 3 to 1. Sure, a lot of the top decks right now are similar to that in the TCG. So it's Malice, it's Yummy, it's Draco Tail, it's Mitsu, and then it's Ryzeal. So limitations to all of those are kind of expected. Speaking of which, Snatchy is going from 2 to 1. Yummy is no longer allowed to be played. Prep is going from 3 to 1. Call to Buy is going from 2 to 1. Oh, you'll love to see it. And again, I know people are like, oh, but like Maxx C, what about Fua? How do I out those? Yeah, I know. It's kind of frustrating to have to deal with those cards. But now you actually have to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And you can't just be like, no, I'm going to turn off your point of interaction. How dare. Anyway, new ban. PogChamp new ban. Moon. Oh, please give me the Moon ban in Master Duel. Here's the thing. Moon is a phenomenal ban because Moon allows any deck, any and every deck, to get into the Fiendsmith combo, full Fiendsmith combo. So being able to ban that and remove the option for any deck to go into the Fiendsmith line is very smart. I think this is just like a good limitation because it's the only card that facilitates this. Otherwise, you have to actually play a Light Fiend style deck. You have to play something that puts a Light Fiend onto the field through various different means. Now, with that being said, there are a bunch of ways of doing this anyway, right? There's a bunch of ways of still putting a Light Fiend onto the board, and you can still utilize all of the Engraver and Lurie and all of that jazz, but it means that you can't just, like, put 2 guys onto a field into Moon. So now you actually have to find something else, which, to be fair, I'm sure there's, like, a Link 3 that you could go into. Actually, you know what? I'm going to check that. Hold on. Okay, so I just checked, and for the most part, the only one that is actually generic for just 2 monsters is Exciton. That being said, you could also go into something like Nightmare Griffin or something else of that nature, or you can go into the actual archetypal Light Fiends, right? The Valmonikas, the Live Twins, even Plunder has one. So there's a few other things. You could also go into Jin, which is funny. So you could do either rank 4 or rank 3 and still kind of accomplish that. But there is a significant decrease in the sheer number of decks that have the ability to go into that. I went too far. Splash Mage. Gotta make note of Splash Mage. Yeah, hooray! The OCG banned Splash Mage. I've talked about this for a lot. I've talked about this in regards to Cybers a lot, which is that Cybers specifically having access to Splash Mage means that pretty much any deck has the ability to just put 6 link material onto the board, 5 or 6 link material onto the board pretty effortlessly. And banning Splash Mage means that you don't get that free extension. You have to commit to something, right? And it means that oftentimes you are more heavily restricted in what you can actually accomplish with a Cybers deck. And so I think this is the most easily bannable card within Cybers. And yeah, Link Monster, Link 2, crazy. Anyway, Baguska is also banned. They also banned Red Ransom. I actually don't mind this. Great limitations to Malice overall. Here are the full changes. It's a lot of big hits, right? But overall, this is a phenomenal ban list and is genuinely impressive. I think Konami has finally figured out that the TCG is doing it right, and the OCG is basically just taken from the TCG at this point, and it's working. These are incredible limitations. They're phenomenal hits to not only just meta decks, but like just the quality of games, right? Limitations to things like Maxx C, limitations to things like Baguska, limitations to things like Impulse is going to provide just more interesting games, and games that aren't just determined by like random chance. And I think that's great. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Does that really, really well, especially in comparison to a lot of other games that are just kind of like, I don't know, shit shows. So overall, pretty fun. Great ban list. I don't know what else to say. Just incredible. Well done, OCG. Yeah, I'm a little scared for Eclipse Wyvern to 3, but realistically, I don't think that changes anything, right? There's that. However, notably, this does say if this card is sent to the graveyard, so you could just like link it off for Striker Dragon, which now makes me Dragon Link kind of seems interesting. I just thought about that. Yeah, having a 3 of guy that does a thing when, oh wow, and you got Baldrake back to 3. I'm not gonna lie, Dragon Link looks kind of interesting. I'm gonna call it quits there though. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, a like is very much appreciated, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye bye.